Hello, today's Bible study comes from the book of Acts, chapter 19, and it is verses 23 through 31, and reads as follows. About that time there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought a lot of business for the craftsmen there. He called them together along with the workers and related trades and said, "You know, my friends, that we received a good income from this business. And you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus, and in particularly the whole province of Asia. He says that gods made by human hands, are no gods at all. There is danger not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited, and the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty." When they heard this, they were furious and began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Soon the whole city was in an uproar. The people seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and all of them rushed into the theater together. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but the disciples would not let him. Even some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, sent him a message begging him not to venture into the theater. Well, we are continuing with Paul still in Ephesus, and as things were going well there, a great disturbance came, and it tells you that in verse 23, there arose a great disturbance about the way, and a silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, he brought a lot of business for the craftsmen there. Well, what this man was doing was building images, idols, whatever it may be, and he was upset. He Paul was upset in their business, and their business was something that Paul has spoke about you worshiping these idols. And he called them together along with the workers and related trades and said, "You know, my friends, that we received a good income from this business." Well, they were making money off of it. People were buying idols. They believed in these things, and they were making these images form. And hey, Paul started messing up their money with this talk of the God. And it wasn't the God, it was our God. It wasn't these ones that they were making, but just the one. And they were upset by this. This was messing up money. And once again, money leads the way. And you see and hear how the fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus and in practically the whole province of Asia. He says that the gods made by human hands are not gods at all. Uh-oh. So Paul had been preaching the word to the people there, and they knew who Paul was because they knew who was messing up their money, but they also knew who Paul was because they said, this dude Paul, who's messing up our money, he also has convinced, and listen to what they said, and led astray, which their images were doing anyway, was leading people astray. But they said Paul led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus. And then they said not just here, but practically the whole province of Asia. And what he was saying to the people is he says that the gods made by human hands are no gods at all. Well, that's the truth. Paul was telling the truth. But when you are in an area that don't want to hear the truth, even in our modern day churches, your words aren't going to be accepted well. Even in our modern day pulpits, your word is not going to be accepted well. And they weren't accepting this. Not only do we make money off of these images that we have created and people believe that they are gods, now we got this man here who's not only changed the people locally, but in the province. And he just been speaking words. He says that the God made by human hands are no gods at all. And then the dude says, look, there is danger not only that our trade will lose its good name. First of all, first thing first, we gonna lose money, man. We've been making money off of doing this job, and he gonna mess up our money because our trade will lose its good name. You gonna mess up our business. But also, here's the but, because you saw the money came first. But also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited. Well, Artemis wasn't a god. Artemis never was a god. So, yeah, he was going to have some problems because Paul was letting the people know who God was. And although they had and believed in this Artemis or were worshiping her or whatever, the temple of Diana, it was famous. And it was famous around the world. And they probably made a lot of money from it, but it wasn't God. This deity was not a true deity. And don't forget that this even quote unquote God they had, goddess, this was a moral worship. This was a worship of an idol, and she was definitely a goddess of sex and promiscuity. So she was not a god at all. She was a man-made created image that man decided to do what he was going to do with it. So they upset with Paul even more because you going to mess up all our stuff. And she is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world. Will be robbed of her divine majesty. See, they believe in this image that they created. And Paul has told them, gods made by human hands are no gods at all. So this is going against what they've been going through and what they've been thinking. And Paul has been changing minds. He's been speaking. They've been seeing works. And they know this. So when they heard this, they was upset with Paul. They was mad. So they had to bring some attention to themselves and what they did. So what did they start doing? They start shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." So then the city went into an uproar. So the people seized Gaius and Aristarchus. Now they were traveling with Paul at this time, and they were traveling companions from Macedonia. They were with Paul. And all of them rushed into the theater together. They went to the theater together. And Paul wasn't timid, wasn't scared. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd. But the disciples, they wouldn't let him. Probably because of the uproar, but they wouldn't let him. Even some of the officials of the province who were friends of Paul sent him a message begging him not to venture into the theater because there were angry worshipers in the theater and they weren't of God. They were worshiping this idol, this temple, and they were talking about Diana. But although she was being worshipped throughout, Paul was changing minds. And as he was changing minds, when he changed minds, money changed because you couldn't make those idols and images and tell them that that's God because Paul told them about it. You couldn't have all this work that you do and sell people and tell them it's an idol because it's no longer an idol. So that job that you do, that money that you bring in was being removed when you had faith and belief in the true God. And this started the riot in Ephesus. And as you'll see when we continue, Paul is going to get a little further into this detail, but right now, Paul is being told, don't go over there. And he said, they don't want you to go over there. We do not want you to go there, Paul. And men were mad. They were trying to make money, and Paul was correcting. And as you notice, Paul corrects a lot of the time. He shares a true word, and the true word was, them things that you make, they're not God. That idol that you worship, that's not God. And people were believing Paul. And people in Ephesus, in the province of Asia, were changing. Amen.